Welcome to Massive Passive Cash Flow, the podcast that guides professionals to financial prosperity. Join our community and let's start building your wealth. Here's your host, Gary Wilson.
Welcome back to the Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. I'm Gary Wilson, your host, and I'm glad to have you back. If you haven't already done so, would you please subscribing to the podcast? Of course, the biggest one is Apple, but you choose, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, whatever it is. We're glad to have you. The subscription, though, helps a lot. We measure our success by that. Okay, and while you're out there, go ahead and visit globalinvestoragent.com. If you're an investor like me, you get to pick one of our many trained agents who are trained to work with you and I, the investors. They have the tools and the strategies to identify, analyze, and negotiate on and off-market deals in 36 states and growing. So grab one. And by the way, if you're an agent and you know the market's changing, which it is, do not hesitate. Click on the Learn More button and see what this is all about. We actually serve investors through the agent network, and you can be one of them. And it doesn't cost you a dime out of pocket to do it either. So click on the Learn More button and let's talk about that. Hey guys, we got a great guest today, Joey Mure. Joey, thank you so much for taking your time to do this, man. You got a great topic and a great service, and I can't wait to turn everybody on to that. So thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure, man. This is going to be a great conversation.
Yeah, I know so for everybody listening, Joey and I have already been speaking. I've read his background, and you're going to love this one. So just turn everything off and be ready to pay attention and take notes. Unless you're driving, don't you save that for later. But Joey, if you could, if you don't mind sharing with people a little bit about how did you go from being a bright-eyed youngster with big dreams to where you are now, and create some background for us, if you don't mind.
Sure, absolutely. I won't give you my mom's version, because that'll be way too long. Yeah. But basically, I'll say this: I was that guy that was kind of climbing the corporate ladder at Wells Fargo Mortgage, very successful, closing tons and tons of loans and leading a sales team. And man, I was killing myself and didn't realize it. I loved what I did, but I was working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. And man, the things that I loved the most were getting further and further away. And I give this example because there's a lot of realtors that potentially are listening to this and business owners who can totally connect with me on this. But I was at the beach and I would say, hey, to my wife and my 5 daughters, I'd say, you guys go down to the beach. I'll be right behind you. I just have one more call, this one pre-approval I need to finish, this one fill in the blank, and I'll be right there with you. And 3 hours later, I go down to the beach and they were walking up on the boardwalk and they were just pissed because Dad, who works so hard so we can afford a vacation like this, is actually still choosing work over being present. And man, that kind of started to put a toll on us, and it began to tell me something's just not quite right. Like one of the guys that was ahead of me at Wells Fargo, he was in a regional position, died at the age of like 52 on a treadmill. Wow. At one of the conferences. And I thought, this is a very stressful job. And if that's really the next layer, what I'm really shooting for, that's not really what I want to sign up for. And so right around that time, I had gotten introduced to this idea of passive cash flow, passive income. And I was like, you know what, that's got to be the right way out. And I started putting my money in the right places instead of putting it in 401ks and IRAs and 529 plans and all the alphabet soup that the IRS and the government has created. And I started to say, what can I do with this? And as I got my eyes opened and exposed, it started to really say, man, this is the answer. Like, this is what people need. More than they need my help with mortgages, they need some guidance on what passive income will give them freedom from their job. And so I broke out from the mortgage industry, making over $300,000 a year, and gave that up to start this whole concept of wealth without Wall Street with my now business partner, Russ Morgan. And he was my coach at the time. And so anyways, we broke out together in 2014 and then started the brand in 2016 that we operate under now. And now we just help people follow essentially the same process that I went through, and we didn't even really understand it at the time. But now looking back, we've been able to chart that path and make it really simple for people to follow.
I really appreciate you not only sharing that, but explaining this to people. And I want everybody to recognize this. And I've said this before, I'm a real estate guy, but that doesn't mean you should have everything in real estate. I think it should be part of the foundation of a good financial plan. But Joey, in your experience, so as you've grown and developed and matured, personally and professionally, would you say that your financial plan, your vision, really doesn't just encompass one thing? It's like a plan that it utilizes a couple different disciplines that probably collaborate with and work well with each other. Is that more of an accurate picture?
It is. And here's the thing that I want to be careful about. Mm-hmm. Most people, they hear Wealth Without Wall Street and they say, ooh, what do you invest in? Yeah. Right. Tell me all the fun thing. And this thing, that's super cool. Like, we're going to get to that. But the bigger thing is I'm sharing this from my heart because there's so many of my friends who are still real estate agents who have been working their tails off for years and years and decades. And they've never learned to take their active income and turn it into passive income. Mm-hmm. Never. They've only thought, I got to get the next sale. I have to get the next buyer. I have to get the next this, the next that. It's a hamster wheel that never ends. Now, you earn a great living. You have a great income, but a great income does not produce freedom. Only when your passive income exceeds your monthly expenses. Mm-hmm. And once I got that picture in my mind, just that one formula, I was like, everything's changed. Right. And I hope for whoever, like, as you're listening to us, this conversation, that you are now immediately changed as that one simple thing, because it changes everything. I would never put money in my 401k or IRAs because those things limit my access to that money until I'm in my 60s. Right. Let's say you're in your 30s right now, your 40s. Do you really want to wait another 20 to 30 years to access that money? Right. That's never going to produce freedom today. And the worst thing that can happen is, as some friends of mine have recently said, there's some agents that were working. They were at the top of their game, right? Closing one of the top producers in the city. And they literally died 2 weeks after their last closing.
Man.
And to me, that just it's a major fail, not because they love real estate and they just want to do it out of the, goodness of their heart. It was because they had never taken responsibility for their finances, and created freedom by taking that active income and moving it over to the other side of the coin and creating passive income. And so that's my high horse for just a second, Gary. I have to throw that out there. So what you're doing with realtors is like, I cannot support it enough, because if you can get somebody, a mentor like Gary, to help you learn this one thing now, especially in this changing environment, like, this is the time for sure. Like, this is an amazing opportunity to have a mentor who's willing to show you the ropes. And you won't be in a bad position if you have to do that. So
well, I appreciate you sharing that. Obviously, I'm clearly I'm the host of the podcast, and I'm humbled that you have mentioned that. But I want people to recognize too is I did not get here where I am by myself. Lord knows I definitely had help from some really good mentors and teachers and just good all around people that were, saw ambition and I was willing to work. And that was the common theme that I heard from people. And I always tell people the same thing is, you know what? I don't care if you're the smartest. I don't even care if you don't have any money. What I do care about is, are you ambitious? Are you willing to learn? Are you going to let me teach you and coach you? Be teachable, be coachable, and learn the systems first, and then you can tweak them and make them your own. Entrepreneurs, a lot of agents all agents are entrepreneurs by definition, and we're all alike. We want to just look at something. I can make it do this, and I can make it do that. And I learned myself the hard way. So just take it from me from experience. Take it the way it is on the surface. Whatever it is I'm giving you, teaching you, showing you, learn it, implement it, and then you'll see all the ways that you can tweak it and modify it and all that. So I just want to get that out there. I feel like I'm starting to do my own teaching and preaching. But let's get back to you, Joey. So
Sure.
Clearly real estate is part of everybody's lives. I mean, food, shelter, clothing, right? That's one of the top three necessities. But when it comes to real estate, it does give you freedom of choice. Once you have some, you can use it as a foundation to other things. And I wonder if you don't mind, let's touch on some of those other things, because I do it too. I mean, IULs and even crypto and stuff like that. I'm not a one-trick pony, and I think you, listener, I think you should not be a one-trick pony. So, Joey, go ahead, if you could touch on that. The part about expanding and leveraging and trying to create as much passive income as we possibly can with the active income we have.
Yeah. So number one, if you have a vision of what financial freedom looks like for you, it will keep you focused on doing the hard work. It's not easy. The formula is easier, right? Passive income greater than monthly expenses. It's an easy formula, but it's hard to get there. And so you have to have a big why. Once you have that down, then it's just putting your cash in the right place and stop doing things that are keeping you away from financial freedom. So for instance, I have a 15-year mortgage because I want to get to a point where I can retire. That's a lie, right? That is a bad idea. You get your 15-year mortgage, it needs to be the longest term possible because of inflation, because of taxes. And I don't have time to go into all the details, but lower your monthly expenses to the lowest they possibly can be. And that's going to be with a 30-year note. A 15-year is just taking more of your cash flow and putting it towards debt every single month. Stop paying extra on student loans and car loans and things like that. That cash flow needs to go to your control, right? And now we use a concept called infinite banking, which uses whole life insurance as your basis to grow and protect your money for generations, not just for today, but for generations. When you leverage that, and then you put all your capital into the right location, you leverage that into the places that you are best suited as an investor. And you say, well, Gary, Joey, how do I know what kind of investment is the best for me? And I'd say for the longest time, we didn't know. We were just like, well, let's try a bunch of stuff. So we got into land flipping. We got into short-term rentals. We got into crypto mining computers. We got into, I rent an RV called Cousin Eddie. I have a condo that I rent out long-term. We have an e-commerce business. We had some syndications. Like all these things are on our report every single month that we tell you what our personal passive income is every single month on our show. Well, those are great. But if you're like, I really can't afford to try all those things. So which one should I start with? And the thing that we developed is called the Investor DNA Profile. And so it tells you, hey, based on your DISC profile, what are the things that you'll like about land flipping? Like, what are the pros of land flipping for somebody who's a high D personality, for instance? Or what's the cons of having turnkey real estate as your strategy if you're a high C, really detailed and organized and loves to follow a process? I mean, there's always pros and cons with everything. And so we developed this profile to help people to define what are the one or two that I need to focus on, and then start getting coaches and mentors to help you go deep in those strategies. We do that through connecting people to those coaches, and then also surrounding people with like-minded people in masterminds. And so you think about this process, if you can get clear on your goal, you can start putting cash in the right location. You figure out who you are as an investor, you can go fast. I mean, we've seen people, Gary, go from being a school teacher, literally, and within 24 months, she got super clear on where her cash was and how to do land flipping. She became financially free where she didn't have to go back to being a teacher that next school year. And she got to spend more time with her daughter. She's a single mom. And that to me fires me up, because there's so many people, and we've mentioned before, they will go through their whole lives never creating passive income. And they will always be having to go to work. But there are people that can do it with much meager means, right?
Right.
That can do it in 2 years, 3 years, stuff like that. That's what gets me fired up.
Yeah. That's a great example and a great story too. And I appreciate you sharing that. It's just, ironically, by the way, a lot of the folks that I've taught over the years, I think we're up to, in person, me teaching like one-on-one 24,000 people. This is over quite a long period of time, about 20 years. So it's not like I did it all in the last year or anything, but one of the top 7 groups was actually teachers. Teachers are like, they look at what they have. They're smart enough to realize they get what amounts to basically a 403B. They might have still a teacher's pension, depending on what part of the country they're in, if they're in northern state or southern state. And maybe they flipped a home every now and then during the summer, but they knew they developed the skills and the talent. They understood how to make money in real estate, because they didn't want to just be on a fixed income and wish they had traveled the world when they're 85 years old. That 40-year job thing, just like to me, I'm like, I can't. That's not going to work for me. So my DNA told me I had to do something else. so I love teaching. You had great learners too, by the way. So let's talk about the infinite banking a little bit. Would you consider that one of the part of the framework of an overall good, healthy plan? Is it integral into that? We'll be right back with the Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast after I invite you to Monday Night Live. Every Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, I teach a class without fail for you on subjects ranging from flipping to buying rentals, managing rentals, wholesaling, commercial, creative purchasing techniques, analyzing properties, identifying properties, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of subjects. And if you are a licensee, if you have a real estate license, you should definitely tap in, because there are a lot of investor agents also in the class. Many of them are on the global investor agent team. So you can learn from them, as well as from me, how to actually work with investors correctly and profitably. All right, we'll see you Monday night. The link is in the show notes. Go ahead and register. We'll get right to the Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast.
100%. Yeah. Infinite banking is what I started out with whenever I was at the mortgage business. I needed a better place for capital to reside. And if you think about it, there's really only a few choices when it comes to that. I could either put it in a savings account, earn 0.00 nothing percent, and get no return, but have access. Mm-hmm. Or I can put it into something like a very specifically designed life insurance policy. And by the way, we didn't get this idea from like an insurance sales guy. Right. We got this idea from the bank I worked at. Wells Fargo Bank has $19.3 billion in life insurance cash values. Mm-hmm. And you say, wait a minute. Everywhere I've ever heard, and I don't know about you, but as I grew up, if you told me to put money into life insurance, whole life insurance, that was like the worst thing you could tell me, right? Yeah. The Dave Ramseys, the Susie Ormans, they always tell you it's a terrible investment. Mm-hmm. And you know what? They're right. It's not an investment. It's just a place for your cash to reside. And that's why banks do it at such a large amount. Right. And the reason is it's super safe. It's guaranteed to grow. Like in terms of the amounts, it's 3 to 5%. It's nothing like super spectacular, but it's light years ahead of your checking account or savings account. Yeah. And you can have it grow tax-free and be able to pass to the next generation tax-free. Like there's just nothing else like it. And once I got my head around it and I realized that the very bank I worked for had more in life insurance than they have in real estate. Wow. By the way, 10.3 billion, I think is the number in their real estate holdings, 19.2 billion in life insurance.
Almost twice. Wow.
That got my attention, right? And I said, if it's good enough for them, I need to figure out what's behind this. I started putting $60,000 a year into cash value life insurance like this, and it started to accumulate. And I started to gain access to that money. And it just turned on a light switch in my brain that said, what can I do with this? And before that, when I was putting money in 401ks and IRAs and all these other things, I didn't think anything about what to invest in because it was already decided for me.
Yeah.
Right. It was in mutual funds and ETFs and all these things that I couldn't even spell. I couldn't even understand what were these things, being invested in. And it was just kind of like this roller coaster. Well, I'll just wait for it to go up and it comes down. And, oh, well, you're young and you have all this time for it to come back. And all that's lies. All of it's lies. And so, yeah, once I had my money in the right location, it just became this launching pad to say, now I got to get it to work. And that's when it started to lead into, so you asked the question, is it a foundational part? Is it, integral? And I would say 100%, because it's not only for me, the here and now, it's also now I have policies on all of my children, my 5 daughters.
Yeah.
And they're going to be able to pass it down to their children. Like it's a system that will complete itself just by using this to grow our own passive income while we're alive. And that gets me really fired up. Yeah.
And that cash value it obviously can be leveraged to do other things like buy real estate,
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And why is that important? So Gary, this is just, and I didn't mean to go into all these details, but I'll go ahead and just, I'll share this with you. The difference between using a policy like this designed for cash value growth is when you leverage it. When you say leverage, you're saying very specifically, you're borrowing against that cash value.
Correct.
That means you're not taking the cash value out of the policy.
Yeah.
And so what does that allow you to do? It allows me to have both the down payment on that next real estate transaction and the cash continues to grow at the contractual amount that it was guaranteed to grow at. So if you're listening to this and you're like, wait a minute, did he just say, yes, the down payment is being used to buy the property and the cash continues to grow on your behalf? You get both.
Yep.
Whereas if you just use a savings account, you only get the down payment on the house, which isn't a bad deal. But if you could have both, why wouldn't you? And then the cherry on top is the death benefit that is essentially being provided to protect all of your loved ones in the meantime.
Right.
And so you get all 3 of those things at work by utilizing a system like this. It ultimately doesn't cost you anything. You're just using your money more wisely and more directed at what makes more sense.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting, Joey. When I was just getting started out in life, I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. We weren't poor, by conventional standards, but just average middle class. I mean, go to college, get a job, work for 40 years and retire. That was it. So, but when I started building wealth on my own, I was starting to hang around other wealthy people. And everybody, I want you to just listen to this. This is back in like the late 80s when I first got started. And I swear over half of them had whole life policies. The wealthy people, a lot of them business owners, had big whole life policies. And they would tell me what they were doing. I just didn't process it. It didn't make sense because on the surface, like you said, I'm thinking, well, that's not a good investment. But you have to look at it 3-dimensionally. You got to turn that thing sideways and look at it 3-dimensionally and realize how powerful it is. You have cash value you can borrow against. You're still earning money even though you borrowed against it. And I know some people today that were borrow against it and lend it out at a much higher rate. So they're making money twice on the same dollar.
Exactly.
And there's other tax, like the money that passes on to your heirs, it's not taxable. So you're able to protect your estate. It's a shame what happens in the world when if somebody built a big business and then they pass away, often the business goes with it.
100%.
So you can protect your heirs by having a giant policy like this and continue to grow a portfolio of income producing assets. Real estate probably could be one of them. So in any case, really interesting background there because I didn't get it in the beginning, but now, fast forward, all these years, I'm like, boy, anybody with wealth that I know, makes us a part of their overall strategy. It's power. So you have to play offense and defense. And this is a great way to play both with the same vehicle,
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, if you wouldn't mind, which I know a lot of people are thinking like, well, I've got a 403B, I've got a 401k, and Gary, I want to do like Gary. I want to retire when I'm 40 years old. And first off, I'll tell you, don't be like me, be better than me. I had to learn from the school of hard knocks. You get to learn from listening to people like Joey. So, but what have you learned about 401ks and those defined benefit plans? I mean, I used to have one too, and it's in the past, obviously now, but.
Yeah, I would just say that here's the thing. You can get into a very technical argument about these types of things like, well, what's the rate of return? And, I get a match from my employer, and isn't that free money and all these? Why would I stop doing that? And the whole thing I'd say is I'm just really simple-minded. Mm-hmm. If it comes down to I want financial freedom in my 40s, in my 30s, whatever the number is, if it's not 62 or 59 and a half or beyond, then it's the wrong vehicle. It doesn't matter what the rate of return is. In fact, my business partner at one point, he said, you can't pay me enough rate of return to keep me out of freedom. Mm-hmm. So it don't buy that. And the other factor is this. I'll use an analogy from a mortgage standpoint. Let's say, Gary, you and I are sitting at the closing table, and I pass you the closing docs on this new property you're going to buy for yourself. This is a primary residence, let's say. Mm-hmm. And we go through, we say, hey, this is the property you're going to buy. This is how much the mortgage is. This is the closing date, so on and so forth. And then at the very bottom, it says the interest rate, and it says TBD. Mm-hmm. And I pass it to you and say, hey, Gary, go ahead and sign on this. What's the chances are that you're going to sign on that?
Nowadays, not very good.
To be determined, right? Yeah, would you ever sign a loan document that said to be determined?
Yeah. Nope.
Never, right? Yeah. It would be crazy. Yeah. But that's exactly what 401ks and IRAs require of us. Mm-hmm. Because we have no idea what portion of that amount of money that we're accumulating we get to keep. Until what? Until we go to take that money out, and the government at that time determines what the interest rate, in this case, the tax rate is going to be.
Right.
So you've been putting money in for 20, 30, 40 years, and someone comes into office and they say, you know what? The tax rate for ordinary income needs to be 60%. Wow. And you're supposed to retire that year. What portion of the money do you get to keep?
Yeah.
You get to keep a minority of the money that you put away for that long. Mm-hmm. That doesn't sound like a good deal at all.
Yep.
Right? I'm not in any control. I'm just putting up all the money. I'm taking all the risk, and someone else gets to determine what our partnership looks like 30 years from now. It's a bad deal. We've just been told that it's for our benefit, and it's because we don't know how to create passive income. And so we just say, well, I'll abdicate that to somebody else and let them do it. The point is, they need to get with a Gary Wilson who can teach them how to create passive income and walk through that process and take control of their finances today, because this is where freedom needs to live.
Yeah. Would you say that that's probably like that traditional mindset, go to college, get a good job, get a 401k? Is that one of the biggest inhibitors to someone developing their own investor DNA? Or what would you say is the biggest obstacle for people trying to build wealth? I mean, to me, it's their own mind, but you can probably elaborate more than I could on that.
No, you're right. And I would say, so the mindset has been given to you. It's programming.
Yeah.
Right. It's programming from both the government and Wall Street. They're very good at making you think a certain way, and that this is what success looks like. But the second thing, and we talk about this a lot, is not having access to cash keeps you in a point where you're not creative. Right. If I consistently put money away into these other places, 401ks, IRAs, paying off debt, put money into my home, whatever the case may be, I don't have to think about what to do with money. Yeah. And so I don't. And I just shut that part of my brain off. And so not having access to cash is the number one reason people are not financially free. And the leading cause of that is your mindset that you've been programmed to think, I don't need access to cash. It's for my benefit to put it away for 40 years.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I'm thinking back to the 401k too. I remember when I first started working, I was in banking too, by the way. And I guess I could tell everybody, it's PNC Bank, and moved my way up to be working on mergers and acquisitions. So I got to see things from the inside. And I look at my 401k and I think, you know what? It's doing pretty good. But, if I try to pull my money out before I'm 59 and a half, I get penalized. But it's my money. And if I turn 70 and a half, I don't pull enough out, I also get penalized. And I'm like, wait, it's my money. Yeah, So it really just drove me batty. And but going forward, and everybody's going to be curious about this. I understand you were able to take a relatively small amount of cash flow, $2,500 a month, and turn it into a lot more than that in a short period of time. Was that? Can you give us like the kind of the halftime show? Here's what happened in the first half and how this happened.
Yeah. So like, as I mentioned before, we started putting tons of cash into these policies that accumulated a lot of value. And so anytime that money is accumulated into one location, you have to figure out what to do with it. So as we started our podcast, this was almost 6 years ago now, we started interviewing people who are experts in passive income. We didn't pretend to be experts in it. We were experts in the infinite banking concept, not in passive cash flow. But we were interested and we had to learn. So we started getting these educators telling us, this is what I do. This is what I do. Land flipping, short-term rentals, crypto, like all these different things. And so we just started doing things at a high level. We started a land flipping business where we buy properties at 25, 30 cents on the dollar from sellers who don't want them anymore. It's just like people that inherited land or people that are, out of state owners who don't ever get to enjoy the property, or they had a big goal at one point to build on it. And then that's changed. And now they're just sitting there on this land. We send them letters. They send us back an offer or with an offer, they send us back a yes or a no. We purchase that and then we sell it on terms to the retail market. So if I buy a piece of property for $1,000, I can sell it on terms for roughly 300% more, roughly like $4,000. But I'll put it on like $200 a month for 20 months or whatever the case may be and make it very affordable for the next buyer.
Okay.
If you can start stacking those notes up every single month, right now, our current land business, which someone else runs for us, that's why it's passive. Okay. It grosses over $26,000 per month. Wow. And it nets us about $18,000 because our partnership in that group is a 70-30 split. So okay. we have no time invested, just money in the purchasing of the land. And we've grown almost $18,000 a month to our bottom line every single month.
Land flipping. Yeah. I'd love to have you back because we could probably spend a whole half hour just on that subject. And guys, this is really important. I'm sure you've noticed what's happening in the real estate market the last couple of years. And one of the outcomes is land is like the new gold. I mean, just go to certain states like Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Texas. My gosh, Texas. The values are gone up dramatically. And there's going to be another one or two sleeper states. You watch, it'll pop up in the next, decade, possibly generation that, we'll fill you in once we figure out who I'll just tell you one of them, I think, is South Carolina. It's a sleeper. Look at North Carolina, look at Georgia, look at Tennessee, look at Florida. Guys, there ain't much left,
That's right.
It's just like gold, it's a fixed commodity. So in any case, this was an interesting thing, Joey. When I first got started, the gurus that I was learning from were kind of saying, you don't want to buy land. You can only borrow up to 50% loan to value. The banks don't like it. And it's just dirt. And I remember thinking, yeah, but it's a fixed supply. And they would joke about it. Yeah, everybody says that. It's not making it anymore, right? You've heard that one before. And I'm like, well, but it is true. They're not making it anymore, And here we are now, good old United States. And we've got a massive housing shortage, particularly affordable housing. And I'm telling you, if you've got land or you're part of that equation and some developer builder comes along and wants to put in a bunch of tiny homes or affordable housing complex, I mean, you're sitting on a gold mine. You're literally the Jed Clampetts, the old Beverly Hillbillies.
That's right.
Well, I tell you what, that's probably a great way to kind of end things here. But for people who are interested in learning more about this, how can we get a hold of you? Website, even an email, anything you're willing to share. Because this is probably going to be one of the top ranked podcasts we have. So.
Well, I just hope it inspires you, man. At the end of the day, freedom is not something that you have to put off or defer. That's just a lie that we've been told our whole lives. And I just want to encourage you to take action today. If you'll go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/massive passive cash flow. I know it's a long one, but hopefully you'll remember it because we're on the show. There, you can find a link to meet with one of our coaches for a free 15-minute call. You can get access to our financial freedom analyzer quiz, or you can actually look to apply for one of our masterminds. We have a lower tier mastermind for those just getting started. And then we have a high-end accredited investor only with access to very unique exclusive deal flow and things like that. So yeah, I'd love to have you go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/master passive cash flow.
Okay. That is awesome. By the way, I'm a huge fan of masterminds. My first one was in 2012, and I've been at times as many as 3 at a time. It's well worth it. I mean, you get to network with other people who are achieving what you're achieving, and there's always a leader or a subgroup that's sort of pulling you forward and showing you the way, that they're a step ahead of you. They show you the path. Masterminds are awesome. It's just like in the book Think and Grow Rich. It's one of the key tenets of success, and it's based on, if you ever question it, it's based on biblical principles. And it's just like natural laws that they work because they work, and everything works when you work, guys. So definitely go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/massive passive cash flow. Get yourself an appointment. Okay, have a consultation and see if we can figure out a plan for you and your financial future and your family. Remember, if you do it right, you can, when it's your last day, you can sign off with a smile because your family is well cared for, right? That is big deal,
No doubt.
Yeah. Hey, Joey, thanks again for joining us, man. I really appreciate this. I think I speak for a lot of listeners, and for listeners, by the way, please leave a review. Go to Apple, leave yourself a review, whatever your channel is. That's probably the biggest one. We really appreciate that, because that's the currency for us. You don't have to pay us for this. So your review is what allows things to keep going. And it's sort of like think of a digital currency, but it's really not a currency. It's just your vote that you really like this podcast, and we certainly appreciate it. And while you're out there, make sure you go visit globalinvestoragent.com. I got to tell you guys, I mean, Joey hit the nail on the head earlier. Especially if you're a real estate agent, this is not time to panic. It's time to prepare. Click on the Learn More button and learn what it is that we're doing with real estate agents around the country. Okay, positions you to develop another part of your business model and position you to invest yourself all at the same time. Couldn't get any better than that. So everybody take care of yourselves. God bless you and your families. And we will see you in the next Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Massive Passive Cash Flow. Be sure to go to realestatewithgarywilson.com to join our community and start building wealth today.